Oh, hey everyone. In today's video, I thought we'd continue on the holiday theme, and I'd show you how to make two quick and easy gifts that you can give to friends or family. They're real easy to make. One is a Christmas tree candy tray, and the other is a Santa Claus ornament carved into a piece of maple. But before I jump into showing you how I designed these gifts, you're going to want to stay tuned till later in the video. I have two very important tips that are going to save you a lot of headaches. When I was carving this tray, I ran into two problems that I couldn't figure out how to fix them, but ultimately did. And I'm going to share those with you, and believe me, they're going to save you a lot of grief. One applies to all of machining, the other one specifically to this tray. So with that, let me jump into showing you how I designed them. Hey everyone, so I'm going to start with the Santa ornament, and here in vectric, I'm going to go to create a new file. And for this project, it's going to be a single-sided project. My board is 3.5 inches wide with a height of 5 inches and a thickness of 3/4 of an inch. We will have the 0 position will be on the material surface. The datum position will be in the front left corner. And we're going to have very high definition. And under material settings, I have it on maple. That's what I happen to be using. So that's all good. Okay, so here we have the board. Now the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an ellipse. And for the ellipse, I'm going to do the same size that I have on my board, minus a little bit just to keep it to the inside. So instead of 3.5 inches wide, I went 3.25, and for the height, I did go 5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and create that, and then close it. And if I zoom back out, I'll find it here. And I will bring it in and place it there. And I'm just going to make sure that it's aligned, and it is. Okay, so that's good. So I've got my ellipse there now, and the next step, I'm going to highlight the perimeter of that ellipse, and I'm going to go over here to the modeling tools, and I'm going to create a flat shape component. And for this, basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a background for the ornament, like a plaque, so to speak, which the Santa will sit on and sit proud of. So for this, I want it to be 1/4 of an inch thick. So I'm going to hit create on that. And there we go. Okay, so now if we go to the 3D view, you can see I've got a 1/4 of an inch thick oval background. Okay. So now from there, I will go to my clip art. Now I purchased from Design and Make, which is on the Vectric website. You can buy all types of files from, like here I have a compass, a sunflower. I also bought the Santa and the other Christmas tree tray that I'll show next. So from here, I'm going to take the Santa and I'm going to drag him onto the surface. And he's way too big, so we're going to shrink him down and see when it gets close. Still, it needs a little bit more. And let's see how he's starting to look. Almost. I'm going to see if I center him. If nope, it's not going to work yet. That's not bad. Yeah, I don't mind that. Maybe I'll go just a smidge smaller. And yeah, I think I like that. Okay, so now that you have Santa placed on the background, I just want to double check. Okay, so now that I've added Santa onto the background, what I need to do, if you'll see here in the 3D view, Santa's not sticking up above the surface. So he's basically merged with the background, and that's not going to work. So what we do is go back in, you click on him, highlight him, then you right click on the mouse, and if you go to under component here, you see it's under merge, and that's not good. We want to add him to the surface. So you click on that, and then it comes up. Go to the 3D view, okay? And now you can see that Santa is sitting on top of the background and proud of it, and that's what we want. That's the look we want, okay? So for the design aspect, that's it for the ornament. Now we're gonna head over to the toolpaths. Okay, so the first step in the toolpath here is we are going to select this outline of the oval or the ellipse. Once you have that selected, I'm just going to double check the material setup first. It's 3/4 of an inch, which is what my material thickness is. The XY datum will be off of the front left corner. We're going to be going off the material surface. The model positioning is correct. And everything else looks good. Okay, so now that the material setup is correct, we're going to go to the 3D roughing toolpath. In the 3D roughing toolpath, I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch 2-flute upcut end mill to do the roughing on this particular ornament. And we're going to be using the selected vector, which we've already selected here, the ellipse, oval. There's no boundary offset. We'll have a machining allowance of 0.02. We can clean that up next in the 3D finishing toolpath. We're going to be using the 3D raster on a 40-degree angle. And that's it for this. So we'll hit calculate. Let me reset the preview there. That was from the old one. And I will show you, we'll play it. Okay, so that's what our 3D roughing toolpath is going to look like, and that is fine. Now that we've got that done, we leave it selected, the ellipse. We go over to 3D finishing toolpath. In the 3D finishing toolpath, we're going to be using a ball nose 1/8 inch end mill. We are going to be using same thing, selected vector. We have a boundary offset of 0.02 on this one. And the reason I have the boundary offset at minus 0.02 is so that I leave a little bit going around the edge, which will get cleaned up with the profile pass that we're going to use to cut it out. And again, same thing, we're going to raster it on a 40-degree angle. And that should be good. So we'll hit calculate. Okay, so now I will just play this one out. Okay, and you can see here, this is the the minus 0.02. That's what this gap is that is going around the perimeter of the ornament. And that's fine. That will get cleaned up right now in the profile toolpath. So I'm going to close this out. So now that we still have the vector selected, we can go up here, profile toolpath, and our start depth will be 0. We're going to a cut depth of 0.753. Remember, my material is 0.75 thick, 3/4 of an inch. So I want to go a little bit past that. I have sacrificial material underneath, so I'm not worried about going through. So that is good. I'll be using a 1/4 inch end mill, a 2-flute end mill, and that'll be an upcut to cut this profile. It's going to do it in 6 passes. And for machining the vector, we are going to machine it from the outside of the vector. So not on the inside, not on it. We're going to be on the outside of the vector. And that will give us just enough room to clean this up. No allowance offset. No separate last pass. No tabs. So that should be good. Calculate it. It's warning me I'm going to go through the material. That's okay. So now I will just hit play. And there we go. So as you can see, it cut it right on the line where I had left that 0.02, and it gives me just enough room around the edge there. And that's it. It looks pretty good. Okay, so I'll close that. Now I'm going to click on Toolpaths, and we will click Save Toolpath. And this is where you can save it to your files so that you have access to it when you get to the machine. All right, so that will do it for this ornament. Next up, I'm going to show you how I designed the Christmas tree tray. Okay, so for this next one, the Christmas tree candy tray, we're going to go back up, create a new file. And again, this job type, it's going to be single-sided. The job size, the board that I'm going to be using for this tray is 12 inches width by 12 inches in height at a thickness of 1.5 inches. The 0 position will again be the material surface, and we're going to be using again the front left corner for our datum position. Very high resolution, and it doesn't really matter the material settings. I have mine, I'm going to make it out of walnut, so that's what I'll be using here. I'll click OK, and again here we have our board, 12 inches by 12 inches at 1.5 inches thick. And so what I used for this design is I went into the clip art here at Vectric, and I went into their design and make store, and I bought the Home for the Holidays collection number 3. And part of that collection, it comes with 5 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And part of it is the candy dish tray, the tree tray. And so I'm just going to select this individual component, and I'm going to drag it over to my board. And now I'm going to upscale it there a bit so that it fits our board. And I go a little more. That's pretty good. I like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to select the tree itself. And the problem with the tree is that from the store, it comes, and what I'm going to do is now that I've selected it, I'm going to right click on the mouse, and I'm going to go to component, and then in component I'm going to go all the way down to properties and click on the properties of the component. And here you're going to see that the component, this tree, has a shape height of 0.6363. And that's not going to work here because my board is 1.5 inches thick. So I'm going to change this shape height to 1.5 inches, and I'm going to close it. Okay, and it should have changed it. So that now if we go into the 3D view, you can see that we have 1.5 inches thick Christmas tree tray. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the 2D. I'm going to click on it again to select it. Once I've selected it, I need to make a vector boundary around the entire piece. So we're going to select it, and then I'm going to go over to here and on create vector boundaries under the modeling tools. I'm going to click on that and see it automatically created a boundary, a vector boundary all the way around the tree. We're going to use that for the toolpaths. So that's it for the design. There's no more to be done here. So we're going to head over to the toolpaths, and in the toolpaths I'm going to select this boundary. And the first step in the process is to go over to the pocket toolpath, is to set our material first, sorry. And the thickness of our material is 1.5 inches. Again, our XY datum is going to be the front left corner. Z0 is always the material surface. Model position's fine. Everything else is good here. We don't have to change anything, so I'm going to click OK. Then I'll go back to the pocket toolpath. And for the pocket toolpath, I'm going to do it, I do it in two passes, in two toolpaths. So I do a rough out one first with a large step over just to, get the material out of there quickly. And then I do a cleanup pass, a second pocket toolpath at a much tighter step over so that it comes out nice and clean, the bottom of the tray, and you don't have a lot of lines from the step over. So in this first one, the roughing one, we're going to start, our start depth will be at 0, the material surface, and I'm going to be going down here to 0.75 is going to be our first cut depth. I want the bottom of the tray to be 1/2 inch thick, so my total cutting for both toolpaths of the pocket toolpath will be 1 inch. The first one will be at 0.75, and the second one I'll show you after is going to be at 0.25. I'm going to be using my radius end mill, which is my bowl and tray bit, and that's the 3/4 inch one. So this is good. It will do it in an offset pattern, so it's going to circle around and around. It'll do it in 3 passes on a climb cut. There's, let's see, no profile pass. On pocket allowance. Okay, so now here's where it's going to be important. Since I'm only cutting from this vector line, which is the outside of the tray, I want to leave a wall on the inside of the tray. For me, I'd like to do it at 3/8 of an inch. So to carve out the inner part of the tray, I have to leave a pocket allowance, okay, of 0.375. And that will leave me 3/8 of an inch from the outside of the tray. So that's good. I'm going to hit calculate, and we'll play that. I like to do it not really, really fast because I like to watch what it's doing just to make sure that there aren't any errors as it's doing it. If you go too fast, you might miss something, and then you'll find out later when you're on the machine and wonder why. Well, this helps to save a little bit of a problem later on. Okay, so that is our rough tool path, okay, for the inside of the tray. So I'm going to close that out. And now, while we're still selected, okay, I've still got the boundary selected. That's what we're working off of. We're going to go back to the pocket toolpath again. This will be pocket toolpath number 2. So now our start depth is no longer at 0. It's going to be, our start depth is going to be at 0.75. And our cut depth is going to be at 0.25. Okay. Again, same bit. Nothing has changed. It will now do this in one pass, offset pattern. Oh, however, let me just double check the settings here now for this one. Yes, it has the tighter step over, which will yield some really nice, a nice clean looking bottom, and it won't have the step over lines. So this is fine. I have it at 6% at 0.045, so a little less than a 1/16 of an inch. Again, climb cut. And same thing, we have to include the same pocket allowance here. So 0.375. So we maintain our wall going around. And that should be it. I'm going to play this one out. And there you go. Okay, so that is good. And now, again, we're still selected, our vector boundary around the outside. So now we're going to cut the profile of it. So we're going to click the profile toolpath. Our start depth will be at 0. And our cut depth, the material is 1.5 inches thick, but I want to go past that to make sure that I cut it free. So I'll be at 1.53. I have sacrificial material underneath this on the machine, so I'm not concerned about it, hitting my table. It's not going to do that, so that's fine. I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch end mill to cut this, a 2-flute upcut end mill. And the reason I'm using that, it's one of the only bits I have that has 1.5 inches or more of cutting length, so that it will actually cut all the way through and not hit the spindle nut on the surface of the material. It's going to do it in 8 passes, and I am going to be cutting this one from the outside of the vector line, and we'll be doing it in a climb cut. Our allowance offset 0, and there's no tabs, so that should all be good. Click profile. It's warning me that I'm going to cut through the material. That's fine. And now I'm going to play it out. And there we go. So we've cut out the tray. Okay. We have a nice 3/8 inch wall going all the way around. So I'm going to close that. So from here, you would just select all the tool paths and then save them to your file so that you have them for later on. I've already done this. So, so that's that. From here, I'm going to go over to the machine now, and I will machine both this tray and the Santa Claus ornament. Okay, everyone, so I just wanted to go over a few things before I start machining the Christmas tree tray. For some of you, this might be a refresher if you've watched the How to Make a Trays video. But for today, we'll be using the 3/4 inch bowl and tray bit. That's going to carve out everything. And then to cut the profile, we're going to be using a 3/8 inch end mill, 2-flute end mill. Okay, so I'm also using double-sided mounting tape to hold my board onto my sacrificial board. And I have both tape for the center of the tree to capture the tray, and then tape on the outer perimeter to hold the scrap once I profile it to keep that from hitting the bit. All right, so now that you've seen the setup, I'm going to mount the board and begin to machine it. Okay, so here's the tray off of the machine, and it came out pretty good. I want to note that I got a lot of chatter when trying to do the profile, both outside and on the inside, as you can see. And full disclosure, I had to save the inside off camera. There were some issues going on with that chatter, and I tried to widen it a little more to get rid of that chatter on the inside of the profile, and I managed to save it. I've got a little bit of sanding to do, blending inside basically. It's not terrible, but I don't know if this file that I bought from Vectric is, I don't know, let's call it a little dirty, meaning that it doesn't have clean edges. I'm not quite sure if it's that, or even if this subtle curve, because it's a very slight curve, if the machine just can't cut it cleanly, I don't know, based upon how much it moves every time it needs to come in, and if that's the minimum. So I really don't know. I tried multiple bits as well, so I know it's not the bits. I changed them over and over to see, and they all cut the same. So this one's got me scratching my head. But again, I saved it, but I got a little bit of hand sanding, a little bit of sanding to do to smooth everything over. So, all right. Okay, so as you guys just saw, if you caught it, the machine, as it was carving the inner part of this tray, the bit crashed into the wall of the tray. And that was on the second profile path. And I've had this problem consistently now in a lot of the trays that I had made. And I can't figure out, or couldn't figure out, why it was doing that only on the second profile path that it would, the second pocket path, that it would crash into the side wall. And I'm going to show you right now why that was happening. So what I like to do when I carve out the pocket of my trays is I do it in two tool paths. The first one I do as a really rough, just fast clean out to remove a lot of the material. And that one I usually do with a pretty large step over to save time and just, again, quickly carve it out. On the second one, I do a much tighter step over, and I also cut it at a shallower depth so that I can speed it up to go a little faster, and I'm not taking off that much material. It's just kind of a cleanup pass. Well, I'm using a bowl and tray bit with, and I'm going to come in close here, with a 1/4 inch radius edge on it, okay? And what I found out, and here's the big tip, is that on your second pocket tool path, your depth of cut cannot be less than the radius of your bit. This particular bit is a 1/4 inch radius. I was cutting my last, or my second pocket tool path at a 1/16 of an inch depth of cut. So what was happening is the software, to account for the 1/4 inch radius and making sure that it would line up with the first pocket tool path, was pushing the bit over more to get the point where the bit would contact the first pocket tool path. So it had to go over more in order for it to do that. And I didn't know that you cannot, on a second pocket tool path, be less than the radius of your bit. So what I ended up doing, and I showed you in the design the correct way, is that the second pocket tool path, I made it a 1/4 inch depth of cut. And once I did that, the machine no longer kicked over to the side and was crashing into the wall. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is As you may have also noticed, as it was cutting the profile out, I pointed out that the edges were very jagged. And let me show you in the design software why that was happening. Okay, so after being on the machine, and as I showed you guys that the wall and the outer boundary of the tray itself was very jagged and had a very rough finish on the inside and the outside. And I was scratching my head and wondering, like, why did the machine do this? I thought there might have been something wrong with the machine or something like that. And while it was machining it, because I had tried to fix it, I had put my hand on the spindle itself and I felt the machine was moving into these ridges that it carved into the wall of the piece. And I was like, well, at first I thought the machine, something might have been loose or whatever, but I ultimately found out that the machine was purposely cutting it that way. It was intentionally moving and creating these ridges. And so I came back into the software and I was wondering, like, hey, maybe this file, that's what it has in it. And sure enough, when I zoomed in on it, you can clearly see that the perimeter wall, both the inside and the outside walls, have this jagged edge in it. So the machine is carving this because it's a detail of the piece. So what I found out is that this file is not clean. And I didn't know that when I bought it. It came already as a candy dish tray, where I was really just looking for something that was just a shape, an outline of the Christmas tree. And then I, from there, would go and create my own pocket toolpath and stuff to make it into a tray. I didn't want something like this, but that's what it was there, and so I went with it. But now in hindsight, I learned that, like, for example, this file is no good. It cost me a lot of handwork after the tray was done, me having to sand all of this on the interior and the exterior to get it smooth. Again, because it wasn't right, and that wasn't good. So that's just something to note if you purchase one of these files also, is to look at it in the preview toolpaths. It's a great feature in Vectric, and it really shows you everything. Like, if it's there, the machine is going to machine it that way. And boy, I learned a lesson. I didn't know that. And well, it saved me from having to do a lot of testing on the machine to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the machine. And in fact, there isn't. So yeah, I'll be very careful when I buy files from now on as to how good they are. And so that's just a little tip to consider. All right, so I'm now set up to do the Santa ornament. Got the block same setup as the Christmas tree. We're using double-sided tape to hold it down. And for this one, we're going to be using a 2-flute end mill to do the roughing out of both the Santa ornament, the inner part, the design, and to cut out the profile. And then to do the finish 3D work, we're going to be using a 1/8 inch round nose bit. This one has a 1 degree taper, I think it is, but it doesn't matter. It's only going to be cutting on the tip. So yeah, so that's that. Let me get it set up and we'll start roughing it out. So here is Santa Claus off of the machine. I cleaned him up a little bit. He was a little furry, so I just wanted to make it a little easier to see the details in it. But all in all, came out pretty well. I'll put some oil on him, and I think he'll be good to go. This was a really easy little project. This little thing probably took, I think, 25 minutes to make, so yeah, as machining time. So really easy to do custom ornaments. Great, great project, beginner level, really, really easy. Okay, so I know in the last video on the trays, I had used my shaper to do the round over on all the edges of the trays. And I just wanted to show you guys that you don't need big fancy tools. I have them. I'm just gonna use a mini router here with an 1/8 of an inch round over bit and just do it by hand. And just to show you that you can do it very easily with little simple small tools. You don't need the really big stuff like I have. So let me go ahead and show you how I do that. Okay, so here are the two gifts. I've oiled them up and just wanted to give you an up-close look at them. That's the Santa ornament. Pretty cool looking. And that is the walnut Christmas tree tray. After I saved it. This tray taught me a lot. But in the end, it did come out pretty cool. And again, two easy, quick gifts that you can make for anyone and enjoy the holiday season. Okay, so that's gonna wrap it up for this one. I hope you learned a lot from it. I know I certainly did. I have been chasing that issue with the trays for a little over a month or two now and couldn't figure out why it was doing that. And I'm really relieved that I figured out that one little problem in the settings there. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. I really appreciate and would like to say thank you to all of the new subscribers. I'm getting very close to 1,500 subscribers, and I just want to say a really big thanks to everyone out there that has subscribed. I hope to continue producing this kind of content so you guys really enjoy it and learn something from it. And with that, I'm going to say happy holidays and see you on the next one.